Hi, my name is Ashley Kittrell. I am a current member of the track and field team here at Ohio University, as well as a student in the coaching education master's program. Today I will be utilizing some of my own personal film to break down the phases, critical features, and critical coaching cues that are specific to the skill of hurdling.
There are 4 phases that I feel best represent the breakdown of hurdling. Phase 1, drive and acceleration. Phase 2, takeoff. Phase 3, clearance. And Phase 4, landing and maintenance. Each of the 4 phases utilizes the same critical features, which are the key body movements required to properly execute each stage of the skill. This video represents the first part of Phase 1, which is the drive phase. This usually occurs out of the blocks, especially for a sprint or hurdle race. So the head should be square with the shoulders as the runner's pushing out of the blocks. The eyes and head should also be fixed on the track below the runner, so the eyes should be looking down for the first 8 to 10 strides out of the blocks. The eyes are the visual steering guide, so they should be focused on the center of the track and where the body is going to be moving next. The torso and shoulders should be square with the head and then parallel to the hips, so they should all be in line. The shoulders will guide the back and forth movement of the arms, so it's important to keep those forward. As you can see, the woman on the far left, the blonde woman in the blue bottoms, her arm is starting to sway out a little bit, which just means her shoulder is opening up just a little too much for the start. The arms are going to steer the legs and move the hands in a cheek to pocket motion. This is a commonly used term in the track world, which just means that the runner's hand should go no higher than their cheek and no further back than their back pocket. The arms and legs are going to work together in opposite arm, opposite leg motion. This is also another commonly used coaching cue, which means if the runner's first stride begins with their right leg, then it's their left arm that should be driving up. The hips should remain square with the center of the track and should be pointing toward the direction of the center of the hurdle. The legs will be driving out of the blocks, like I mentioned. Okay, so that's me in the little bubble in lane 8. Once the runner is through the first part of Phase 1, they will then enter the acceleration phase, which they start accelerating through the hurdle and prepare for Phase 2, the takeoff phase. I chose this clip of me to show the emphasis in Phase 2, the takeoff phase, on the lead leg. So this is the first leg to go over the hurdle. It's the leg, my left leg, that is in the air, heading over the hurdle. The head should be facing the hurdle and the eyes should be looking past the hurdle. So it's important for the runner to avoid looking down and watching themselves go over the hurdle. This would put the head out of line with the shoulders and would throw the torso off balance. The runner's core should be engaged, which should just happen naturally. The shoulders should remain aligned with the hips, which will avoid any twisting or rotating as the runner begins to clear the hurdle. The torso should also remain in a high position with just a slight lean into the hurdle, but nothing too exaggerated. The arms and hands will continue the cheek to pocket motion that I talked about in Phase 1. The lead leg should be matched with the opposite arm. So you can see my left leg is the lead leg and my right arm is moving with the left leg. Phase 3 is the clearance phase, which keys in on the trail leg. My trail leg in this clip is my left leg. So in this phase, the hurdler's head should be square with the shoulders. Their eyes should be looking at the next hurdle or at the track in front of them. Their torso and shoulders should be positioned over the top center of the hurdle, keeping their center of mass as low as possible. So when people are talking about hurdling, they usually refer to it as jumping over the hurdle, which is actually very inaccurate to what the hurdler is actually trying to do. The goal in this phase is to remain as close to the hurdle as possible without actually hitting it. So with jumping, we're creating space or more air between us and the hurdle, and that's not what we want to do. So the torso should also continue leaning forward with the momentum, which will help lessen that gap between us and the hurdle. And the arm movement with the trail leg is probably the most important part of this phase. The arm must be speedy and efficient in snapping back into the body, and the legs move with the arms. So if the arms are quick, then the legs will also come through quickly, specifically the trail leg. While the arm is pulling through, the trail leg knee should tuck into the armpit. So this won't happen literally, but it's a critical coaching cue for the athlete to keep their knee high enough to clear the hurdle and tight enough to their body to maintain their form. Another cue in this phase is to make sure the trail leg actually clears the top of the hurdle. In a race, a runner will be disqualified if they clear the edge of the hurdle instead of the bar, so this is really important. The goal in this phase is to snap the trail leg down as fast as possible. That's our number one focus. And with that, the trail leg foot should be high and cocked at the ankle in order to clear the hurdle and avoid any hitting it. Before I explain phase 4, I wanted to utilize some race film I had of myself in the 400-meter hurdles from a little over a year ago to give you a better visual of phases 1, 2, 3, and 4 in motion. I went ahead and put the previous clip in slow motion. I'm actually going to let it keep running as I speak through phase 4, so I just encourage you to kind of hone in on the different phases you see in this clip. But phase 4 is the landing, right there, landing and maintenance phase. So in this phase, some hurdlers or people who don't hurdle like to call it a victory if an athlete just lands on their feet after hurdling, so without tripping or hitting the hurdle. But there is definitely more to landing than just this, especially if a hurdler wants to reach elite status in this skill. So to start, the runner's head should be facing forward, like I've mentioned in all the other phases. But in this phase, it's important that the runner's cognizant of their head tilt, so they might feel the pull of gravity or just a twist in their torso or a twist in their shoulders, but it's important to keep their head in line with their shoulders. Both the torso and shoulders should remain in line with the hips. This is crucial in avoiding that same turning or over-rotating that would start with the torso and then go into the arms as well. So the arms should maintain the cheek to pocket motion, which will keep the body in proper sprinting form. The runner should really focus on keeping their arms in tight to their body and avoid what a lot of coaches call wild arms. So we're about to see that in this clip here. Unfortunately, I have those wild arms. And I'll talk about how I can fix that at the end of this video. So as the runner comes off the hurdle, they should keep their hips high and avoid letting them sink down into their landing. This is going to maintain their speed, especially coming off the hurdle. The hips should also be parallel to the hurdle even after clearing it. And so the legs should continue in the sprinting form off the hurdle. There should really be no change in form. Hurdling is known as a sprint with just some elongated strides in the middle. The heels should not hit the ground with the balls of the feet. So this is the point in the race or the hurdling process where the athlete really needs to push into the ground with their feet in order to get the energy return from the track that they need to maintain their speed. So the cue here might be to tell the runner to keep moving down the track. This way they're thinking of moving ahead, which will help them avoid decreasing their speed. So here's a short practice clip for you. My drive out of the blocks there is really strong. My speed is great and is well maintained as I accelerate into the first hurdle. This hurdle is blocked by a high jump pit, so I'm really sorry. But my landing here is really smooth. There was no noticeable off balance or anything like that, any twisting. So as I accelerate back into this hurdle, you're going to see my trail leg snap really quickly down and my arms stay tight to my body the whole time. A second practice film, my drive out of the blocks here is not very strong, so I'm having to really work in order to accelerate enough to get into this hurdle. You're going to see me take a short stutter step before the hurdle, which totally disrupts my running rhythm. It shoots me over the hurdle with a little more space above it than I want. My trail leg is really slow and my arms are wild and they do not come in tight to my body. I wanted to quickly revisit this clip that I had shown earlier on. So this is me entering the end of phase 2, accelerating into the hurdle. My takeoff and clearance phases are really strong here. My sprinting form is good, except for my wild arms. So then my landing and maintenance phase are really strong, probably one of my best ever, so I'm pretty lucky to have it on film. But by fixing those wild arms, that's going to take seconds off my race. Just those little things are great coaching cues to get an athlete to that next level in their skill. So as we're crossing the finish line of this breakdown of hurdling, I just want to say thank you. I hope you learned something about the phases, the critical features, and the coaching cues involved in the skill of hurdling. Thanks for your time.